There's a lot on President Bola Tinubu's table. I imagine it's overflowing, both nationally and regionally. I'm talking about the ECOWAS. 50 years since ECOWAS. How far so far? Yes, we're joined by Ambassador Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former Permanent Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, the Presidency, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of Nigeria, The Hague, Netherlands. Good morning, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us on the program. Well, the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of ECOWAS, incidentally, coincides with President Bola Tinubu's second anniversary as president of Nigeria, which is why I said he has a lot on his table. But let's talk about the regional issues now. Shifting alliances, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger quit the bloc earlier this year, but ECOWAS is still trying to pull together. Now, the issues confronting ECOWAS include security, or should I say insecurity. There's economic issues as well, trade. You have traders who want to move goods to Niger, for example, paying multiples as taxes. So what a time it is for President Bola Tinubu, who is the chair of ECOWAS. But I want you to speak to us from that event yesterday. What were you able to glean in terms of what the future looks like for ECOWAS?
Thank you for having me. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, please.
I didn't hear most of your, yes, I didn't hear most of your introduction. But first, permit me. Let me just answer your question about ECOWAS. But let me just say that I actually feel sometimes very upset and furious when I hear retired military officers come on national television and begin to blame foreigners for our crisis, for our problems, for our insecurity. You know, I think it's ingenious. We are the source of our problem, pure and simple, and leadership failure across board, particularly the military themselves, should know better than misinforming Nigerians about foreigners being responsible for our crisis. We are purely, simply responsible for our own, insecurity problem in this country, and our continuous refusal to address it has even made it worse, costing so many lives. But regards to, to ECOWAS, I think there is, there might not be too many things to celebrate, but I think that the little that ECOWAS has achieved is worth celebrating, particularly the free movement of goods and services, persons, goods and services. When you consider, for example, that if there's no ECOWAS, just to go to Cotonou here, or to go to Ghana, which a couple of years ago used to, from here to Cotonou used to take, from Lagos, used to take less than an hour plus, will be compelled, Nigerians will be compelled to take about 15 or 16 visas all the time, but the free movement of goods and services, of persons, goods and services, the trade liberalization, and some of the infrastructure, connecting the region, has actually helped, contributed a lot to increase in trade. Yes, it is true that when you look at the statistics, the recorded trade, between among ECOWAS countries, it's not as high as the informal trade. And that's because, again, over the years, both countries along the sub-region and the authorities have failed to put in place mechanisms that can ensure that they bring an end to smuggling and conduct trade professionally, and business-like, like the rest of the world. I mean, what we are going through is not different from what other countries have gone through, but they've dealt with it, the best they can. And we are, I've always said, Nigerians, Africans, we are not pioneers in anything as of today. But the truth of the matter is that we can actually cut and paste and see what others are doing, to ensure that we operate based on international best practices. So the informal trade is greater than recorded trade. But the truth of the matter is that there's been a substantial increase in trade among ECOWAS countries. So my position and our position among retired career ambassadors of Nigeria, whom I represent, is that yes, ECOWAS has enough experience today to face the challenges of the future, which of course it's part of it is what you started with, insecurity or security, whichever one we want to use.
You make a vital point there, and really, the president is meant to basically set the tone as the chair, Nigeria, most influential, largest nation in the ECOWAS. But when the ECOWAS has lost 20% of its strength, in the sense of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger leaving. In fact, I was referring to trade. A trader, for example, going from Kano to Niger will tell you before probably used to pay 100,000 naira as taxes, now paying times 500,000 naira as taxes. Smuggling now is a bigger deal than it used to be, because you understand the strained relationship, right? So there isn't that kind of communication. So when you look at the losses in that sense, I'm trying to find the best way to capture this question. Is the ECOWAS still as strong as it is, or we're getting to a point where we might be seeing more countries leave because they think, well, maybe the ECOWAS is not as strong or as pivotal to regional development as they had imagined or they expect it to be?
Regrettably, I didn't get your question. I think there's the internet is not steady. But if I get you correctly, are you asking about how can we make ECOWAS stronger or something like that?
Well, sort of, but I wanted to speak to the shifting alliances particularly, and I was referring to, again, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. I spoke about a trader now who has to take goods from Kano to Niger, paying times 5 in taxes. Smuggling has increased. So there are other countries who are watching and thinking, okay, can we do better outside of ECOWAS? Patrick, that's my question really for countries who are looking and thinking, is ECOWAS still as influential? Will it guarantee regional development?
No, look, we absolutely, we can do better. And that's part of what I tried to say initially, that it all depends. Look, it's a process. Forming this economic integration, it's a process. And it requires a lot of commitment and the preparedness of the authorities on all sides, Nigeria and the rest of its ECOWAS brothers and sisters. It requires them to do the right thing. Look, if you go from the United Kingdom to Brussels, to the Netherlands, to Germany, to France, you see exactly what they have done, to address the problems you have raised. What we need to do is to do something similar. Look, we've been discussing this for a couple of years. Again, I make the point that the authorities on all sides are not yet ready to do the right thing. It's a question of doing the right thing. It's not as if we do not know what to do. The European Union has been in existence for for how many years? They've addressed this problem you've raised, and now what we need to do is to ensure that we do just as simple as it is to do this right thing. A couple of years ago, Nigeria, Ghana, Benin, I think Togo, we signed a quadripartite, agreement to address the very issues you have raised. I can almost take a bet that no custom official in this country has ever seen that document or cared about it. And so that's part of the failure. So it's not just that ECOWAS can work if the authorities, in every country decides that they want to make it work. So we can eliminate all the taxes as it is in the ECOWAS agreement. But the authorities in each region, in each state, has to ensure that they obey the community rules, just like the European Union and the other, unions around the world are doing. So if we can just get ourselves to do that, I think that we can resolve the problem you have raised.
Ambassador Keshi, relatedly, when experts reflect on ECOWAS and the progress and challenges, it is difficult not to compare when you hear them speak about the glory days of ECOWAS when they reigned in on Gambia, decades ago, following the abuse of democracy there. And, they talk about Liberia and Sierra Leone, but the same has not been the case for, the challenges to democracy in recent times when you talk about countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and the likes. So the question is, has ECOWAS lost its steam, and is it still committed to the values for which it was founded? At a critical time when we'll be needing his expertise on this particular question, the network is not always clement. Hello, Mr. Keshi? Ambassador Keshi, did you get the question?
I didn't get the question, but I think I kind of get the direction. You're asking about whether
is it still committed to the values of democracy?
ECOWAS. I guess your question is their impact or effect on ECOWAS. And no, my position is very simple on this. From day one when they left, I made a point in every time I had the opportunity to say very clearly, predictably, that with time they will come back to ECOWAS. They cannot isolate themselves. If ECOWAS begin to work as expected, they would themselves appreciate the fact that they need to return to the community because they will benefit from being part of the community. Right now, they are upset over a couple of things, but with time, with maturity, with the reality staring them in the face, I believe that they will come back. I'm not saying that ECOWAS should not try to get them back, but the truth of the matter is that they have reasons. I mean, they are sovereign states. They have reasons to be upset on how they were treated. Remember, for example, when you take Niger, some of us were actually alarmed, when we started talking of military, incursion or military, operations against Niger. And sometimes I say to myself, those who actually came up with that idea, particularly Nigeria and Niger, have no sense of history, absolutely no sense of history, to understand why we should not even have contemplated military operation going to Niger. And I'm glad to say that eventually good reasons, prevailed.
Right.
But I make the point very strongly that with time, and if ECOWAS begins to work as expected and as it should be, that these three countries will return back to, to ECOWAS. It's a matter of time. They would come back. Look, remember that on its own, Mauritania pulled away from ECOWAS. It was the same Mauritania that came back to request for, is it partnership or something like that, because they realized that at the end of the day, you cannot have the community working. And then you, landlord countries, you need some of these countries to allow your goods to come in.
Well, Ambassador, this is what we'll do. If and when they do return, you're going to be the first on this show to have a conversation with, to speak to that. But we have to thank you so much because this conversation is also vital to the rating of President Bola Tinubu, who is the chair of ECOWAS. But hope is something to also hold on to. But we have to thank you once again, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for sharing your thoughts with us on the program.